So we'll go to the amino acid metabolism, right, of individual amino acids. So these are the headings: glycine, alanine, aspartate, and glutamate. Key steps of metabolism of phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, and methionine, and amino acid properties. So I'll be going to deal with these topics in the next 4 classes. So turnover of endogenous proteins. You have seen the dietary proteins are digested, that is hydrolyzed to amino acids. Similarly, all the tissue proteins are also routinely degraded to amino acids and replaced by newly synthesized proteins. So this turnover of proteins is carried out in the lysosomes or proteasomes. So digestion takes place in the digestive tract, whereas this turnover of the proteins is carried out in the lysosomes or in the proteasomes. So the extracellular proteins mainly, and also the membrane-associated and long-lived intracellular proteins are degraded in lysosomes by ATP-independent processes. It is ATP independent. It's a routine hydrolytic enzymes. Lysosomes contain the lysozymes. The hydrolytic enzymes, they don't require any ATP. But the intracellular protein, though here, this lysosome, the proteins are engulfed. So if in the lysosomes, before entry into the lysosome, the proteins are engulfed by the vesicles called autophagosomes. The vesicles fuse with the lysosomes. Lysosomes hydrolyze the protein, lipid, and carbohydrate. The degradation of intracellular proteins, the regulatory proteins, which are short-lived. So here, these are the intracellular proteins mainly, while the extracellular protein turnover is taking place in the lysosomes by ATP-independent processes. The degradation of intracellular proteins mainly, the regulatory proteins which are short-lived, and of abnormal or misfolded proteins occurs in cytosol and requires ATP and ubiquitin. Subsequent degradation of ubiquitin tagged proteins takes place in the proteasome, which is a macromolecule with multiple proteolytic activities and present in all the cells. So degradation of extracellular proteins mainly takes place in the lysosomes, whereas degradation of, and that is ATP independent, whereas degradation of intracellular proteins mainly takes place in the proteasomes, particularly some of them after ubiquitization, but all of them require ATP. So ATP and proteasome, it is essential, and some of them undergo ubiquitation. Let us see which are the ones that undergo ubiquitation and which do not require ubiquitin. Ubiquitin is so called because it is ubiquitously present in all the cells. Ubiquitation is favored in case of those amino acids having arginine or aspartate at the N-terminus, while the amino acids that have methionine or serine do not undergo ubiquitation, but directly enter the proteasome. So the degradation or turnover of the intracellular proteins takes place mainly in the proteasomes, some of them after ubiquitation and some without ubiquitation, but ATP is necessary for the degradation of all of them. So amino acid degradation, so the amino acids destined for energy metabolism are deaminated. So what are the different mechanisms by which deamination can take place? You've learned oxidative deamination, transamination, by dehydratase, or by amino acid oxidase. So by any of them, the amino group is removed to yield the carbon skeleton, and the nitrogen atoms are incorporated into urea. You learned about the urea cycle. The metabolism of carbon skeletons of amino acids. So first, the removal of alpha amino nitrogen by transamination, the first catabolic reaction of all the amino acids except lysine, proline, hydroxyproline, or threonine. So these 4 amino acids are not subject to transamination. That you should remember. Lysine, proline, hydroxyproline, and threonine, they are not subject to transamination. So now after the nitrogen is removed, what remains is the hydrocarbon skeleton, and this that remains is then degraded to amphibolic intermediates. Yes, learned in the TCA cycle. So transamination aspartate is converted to oxaloacetate, and glutamate is converted to alpha-ketoglutarate. And glutamate is also formed by arginine, histidine, glutamine, and proline. The succinyl-CoA is formed from isoleucine, methionine, and valine metabolism. Similarly, tyrosine, phenylalanine, they form fumarate. While these amino acids, alanine, cysteine, glycine, hydroxyproline, serine, and threonine, they form pyruvate. So from pyruvate, glucose can be readily formed. So from all these intermediates, they can form glucose, and that's why these are the glucogenic amino acids. Tryptophan also forms pyruvate. It's not given. Alanine, tryptophan forms, and from alanine, pyruvate can be formed. So that is not given here. You can remember that. These are the glucogenic amino acids. Now, ketogenic amino acids are those that form acetyl-CoA or acetoacetyl-CoA. So they are isoleucine, leucine, phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan. So of these, isoleucine is also glucogenic and ketogenic, both. Whereas lysine and leucine, these are purely ketogenic amino acids. Now, coming to the metabolism of individual amino acids, glycine, which is alpha amino acetic acid. See, this is the alpha amino. This is the acetic acid, CH3COOH. So from that, if NH2 is removed, and that is becomes alpha amino acetic acid. It's a non-essential glucogenic neutral amino acid. Non-essential glucogenic neutral amino acid. It is the simplest amino acid. What is meant by simplest? It has got only hydrogen in its side chain. So this is the R chain or the side chain. It has got only hydrogen, not even single carbon is also not present in the side chain. So this is the simplest amino acid. Because it doesn't have an asymmetric carbon atom, it does not exist in isomeric forms. Metabolism of glycine. So glycine cleavage enzyme present in liver splits glycine to ammonia and carbon dioxide. So glycine is split to ammonia and carbon dioxide and forms, so utilizing tetrahydrofolate forms 5,10, N5, N10 methylene tetrahydrofolate, and NAD is reduced to NADH plus H. So this is the action of the glycine cleavage enzyme. Of course, it is a reversible enzyme. The second metabolic pathway of glycine. So this is the glycine cleavage enzyme. This is the major metabolic pathway in which glycine is cleaved in the liver by this enzyme, glycine cleavage enzyme, to ammonia and carbon dioxide. And the one carbon fragment forms N5, N10 methylene tetrahydrofolate, and NAD takes away and it oxidizes this. So NADH and plus H is formed. So next metabolic pathway of glycine involves transamination by alanine glyoxylate aminotransferase. Glycine is acted upon by alanine glyoxylate transaminase or glycine pyruvate transaminase. It can be called either way. So we generally call it as alanine glyoxylate transaminase, converts it to glyoxylate. And this glyoxylate then can be decarboxylated to form formate or can be oxidized to form oxalic acid. But this glycine can also be acted upon by glycine oxidase to form glyoxylate. So this glyoxylate can be subjected to this. So glyoxylate can also be found by glycine oxidase. So glyoxylate then can be transaminated to glycine by the transamination. So can be this glyoxylate can be transaminated to glycine. If there is defective transaminase, so that is glyoxylic acid alanine, glyoxylate alanine transaminase is defective, this glyoxylic acid cannot be converted to glycine. So all the glyoxylate will be then converted to excessive oxalic acid, particularly when the formic acid formation, this also is blocked. Then all the glyoxylate will be converted to oxalic acid. So normally this can be utilized as glycine reformed, but now it is the entire glyoxylate is now converted to oxalic acid, and so this oxalic acid is excreted in the urine, resulting in primary hyperoxaluria, particularly when decarboxylation is also impaired. These oxalates are insoluble and can crystallize and form stones in the renal tract, leading to complications, infections, obstruction, renal failure, all that can happen. So this is the primary hyperoxaluria where the transaminase is defective. Why it is defective? The enzyme glyoxylate alanine transaminase normally is located in peroxisomes. It is located in this condition in mitochondria or in endoplasmic reticulum, and so it becomes non-functional. So the enzyme is there, but it is not there in its proper place. The person should be in the proper place also. The enzyme must be in its proper site. When it is not in its normal site, that is peroxisomes, but is located in mitochondria or endoplasmic reticulum, it becomes non-functional. So this is called a targeting defect disease. So it is primary hyperoxaluria as a result of defective alanine glyoxylate transaminase is an example of targeting defect disease. This is what you should remember. Now, it can also enter into the glucogenic pathway by forming the serine by the enzyme hydroxymethyl transferase. So glycine may be channeled into glucogenic pathway by getting converted to serine by reversal of serine hydroxymethyl transferase. So this is a reversible enzyme. Normally, its metabolism is serine is converted to glycine. So by reversal, glycine can be converted to serine. So here, the one carbon that it requires is donated by N5N10 methylene tetrahydrofolate. And so glycine is thus converted to serine, utilizing the one carbon from N5N10 methylene tetrahydrofolate. So that is those are the major metabolic or catabolic pathways or metabolic pathways. So here, because it is here a synthesis again, not exactly catabolism. Now, it all not only serine, it can also form several important products like creatine phosphate, heme, purine nucleotides, glutathione, bile salts. In the formation of all these, this glycine participates. So it is the smallest, simplest amino acid. It has got many functions, metabolic functions. So creatine phosphate, heme, purine nucleotides, glutathione, and bile salts. I'll briefly tell these pathways, how they are synthesized. So creatine, you've already learned creatine phosphate synthesis. Arginine plus glycine in the kidney in the presence of transaminidase or amidotransferase forms goniodoacetate, and this is transferred through the blood to the liver, where it is acted upon by methyl transferase utilizing S-adenosyl methionine to form creatine. So here it's a two-step one. It is given in a single step, but you can learn it in two steps. Creatine is formed, and this creatine is phosphorylated by a kinase. So ATP-dependent reaction to form creatine. That is by the action of creatine phosphokinase or creatine kinase to form creatine phosphate. So this creatine phosphate, as you know, is the reservoir of muscle energy. So the energy is utilized by the muscle cell in the form of ATP only. But that ATP is present in very small quantities and it quickly exhausts, and there must be immediate reserve. So this creatine phosphate immediately provides ATP, and this creatine phosphate, then after donating its phosphate again by creatine phosphokinase or creatine kinase, it undergoes a non-enzymatic dehydration or anhydrate of creatine, that is creatinine, is formed, which is excreted in the urine. That you learned about that in the muscle metabolism, so I'm not going to go into further details of that. So 3 amino acids participate in creatine phosphate synthesis, that is arginine, glycine, and methionine. And you know that creatinine excretion or the blood level of creatinine is an indication of renal failure. That you should remember. So heme synthesis. So delta amino levulinic acid synthase. So it utilizes succinyl-CoA plus glycine to form delta amino levulinic acid, removes coenzyme here and removes this carbon dioxide here to form delta amino levulinic acid, and subsequent steps takes place. This is the rate limiting enzyme of heme synthesis, and this leads further, and by further steps it forms heme. Purine nucleotides. See the phosphoribosyl pyrophosphate, then in the presence of glutamine forms phosphoribosyl amine. So this phosphoribosyl amine now reacts with glycine to form, in the presence of glycinamide kinosynthase, to form glycinamide ribotide. So C4, C5, and N7 of the purine ring is contributed by glycine. C4, C5, and N7 of purine ring is contributed by glycine. Now, this formation of glutathione. Glutathione is gamma-glutamyl cysteine glycine. So glutamate combines with cysteine first to form gamma-glutamyl cysteine, which then adds up glycine to form gamma-glutamyl cysteine glycine. So this glutathione, along with the NADPH and ascorbic acid, forms the redox system of the cells, the redox power of the cell. Glycine also conjugates bile acids, cholic acid and quinodeoxycholic acid to form bile salt, that is glycocolate and glycoquinodeoxycholate, sodium and potassium salts. Glycine is also a constant of proteins. Of course, that is the most fundamental function of any of the amino acids. So it's a constant of protein. Particularly so in collagen, where every third residue is glycine. So in collagen, every third residue is glycine. Glycine is a neurotransmitter also and opens a specific chloride channels. In moderate quantities, it acts as an inhibitor, and at higher doses, it causes over-excitation. So it has got both the functions, inhibitor as well as excitator. Moderate quantities, it is an inhibitor, and at high doses, it causes over-excitation. So that is about glycine. So you should remember about the hyperoxaluria, which can be an amino acidopathy, an inherited disorder. So coming to the next simpler amino acid, alanine. So now this is a non-essential glucogenic neutral amino acid. It has got a CH3 group in the side chain. So it is a vehicle of transport of nitrogen from the muscle to the liver. So alanine can be transaminated to pyruvate by glutamate pyruvate transaminase or alanine aminotransferase. It can be called either way. So glutamate pyruvate transaminase or alanine aminotransferase, they're the same, which requires pyridoxal phosphate to coenzyme. So all these aminotransferases or transaminases, they require pyridoxal phosphate to coenzyme. The enzyme serum glutamate pyruvate transaminase is specifically elevated in hepatocellular jaundice. That's how it is of diagnostic significance. So alanine plus alpha ketoglutarate in the presence of alanine aminotransferase, which requires pyridoxal phosphate as a coenzyme. So alanine loses its amino group. So CHNH2, the amino group it lost, which is transferred to alpha ketoglutarate to form glutamic acid. So this amino group comes here. So it becomes pyruvate, and alpha ketoglutarate becomes glutamic acid. So alanine is formed in the metabolism of tryptophan also. See, in the tryptophan metabolism, tryptophan is first acted upon by tryptophan dioxygenase or tryptophan pyrrolase, which is an iron-dependent enzyme. So forms formyl kynurenine. So here it is oxidative scission has taken place here. So here one oxygen, here one oxygen. So both the oxygens are incorporated. So now it forms formyl kynurenine. So this is the formyl group. So formyl kynurenine. Then a transformylase removes the formate group from this, forming kynurenine. So this formate CHO is removed to form kynurenine, NH2CHO. So that is CHO is removed. So it forms kynurenine. Kynurenine is hydrolyzed by kynureninase or hydroxylated by kynureninase. So 3-hydroxy kynurenine is formed. And this 3-hydroxy kynurenine is acted upon by kynureninase, a pyridoxal phosphate dependent enzyme, which cleaves this alanine here. So CH3, CHNH2, COOH, that is alanine, is cleaved off from tryptophan by the action of kynureninase, which is pyridoxal phosphate dependent. Now, if there is enzyme deficiency or deficiency of pyridoxal phosphate, 3-hydroxykynurenine cannot be converted to 3-hydroxyanthranilate, but it forms xanthurenic acid, which doesn't have further metabolism and will have to be excreted in the urine. So xanthurenic aciduria occurs as a result of the deficiency of kynureninase or of pyridoxal phosphate, its coenzyme. So that is how. And in the fasting state, muscle protein is degraded, releasing amino acids, particularly alanine and glutamine. Alanine is taken up by liver, so alanine is transported through the blood to the liver. The rate of hepatic gluconeogenesis from alanine is far higher than from all other amino acids. So it is the most glucogenic amino acids. So in the proteolysis takes place in the fasting state. So muscle protein is broken down. So alanine is formed. This alanine is transported through the blood to the liver, and alanine. Okay. So this alanine that comes to the liver, then so transamination, amino group is formed, ammonia is formed, and that is detoxified as urea, and pyruvate is formed. So then transamination. So that is about alanine. Coming to glutamic acid. So it is alpha amino glutaric acid. So this is alpha amino glutaric acid. There is a non-essential glucogenic acidic amino acid. Acidic because so this is normally this carboxyl group and amino group are attached to the alpha carbon, and this is the side chain. In the side chain, there is an additional carboxyl group. As such, this would have been a neutral amino acid, but because the second carboxyl group, it becomes an acidic amino acid. Glutamic acid, and which is the other acidic amino acid? Aspartic acid. So aspartic acid and glutamic acid, these are the two acidic amino acids because they have got an additional carboxyl group. So this glutamic acid is subject to transamination by either glutamate oxaloacetate transaminase or glutamate pyruvate transaminase to form alpha ketoglutarate acid, which is a component of TCA cycle and thus glucogenic. So it transports ammonia from brain and other tissues except muscle by forming glutamine in the presence of glutamine synthase requiring ATP. So glutamine synthase, so this is glutamate plus ammonia, which requires ATP, glutamine synthase. So glutamine synthase forms glutamine from glutamate. So in the liver, the hepatic transports ammonia from brain and other tissues by forming glutamine in the presence of glutamine synthase, which requires ATP. Otherwise, this ammonia will be very toxic to the brain and it would cause hepatic encephalopathy as such if it accumulates. And normal serum ammonia level is what? 25 to 50 microgram percent. That you should remember, 25 to 50 microgram percent. So it is normally transported, so it doesn't accumulate beyond that. So because it forms immediately glutamine in the presence of glutamine synthesis. So in the liver, hepatic glutaminase causes hydrolytic cleavage of glutamine to glutamate plus ammonia. 1 second. So in the liver, hepatic glutaminase is there. It causes hydrolytic cleavage of glutamine to glutamate and ammonia. So glutaminase acts on glutamine, releases ammonia. So that is converted to urea in the liver. Whereas in the kidney, so this is in the liver, hepatic glutaminase causes hydrolytic cleavage of glutamine to glutamate plus ammonia. The latter is converted to urea, which is excreted in the urine. This is hepatic glutaminase. So in the kidney, there is another renal glutaminase. Hydrolyzes glutamine, same reaction, glutamine to glutamate and ammonia. But this ammonia combines with hydrogen ions to form ammonium ion, which are excreted by urine. So the activity of renal glutaminase is increased in metabolic acidosis. So here, by the action of carbonic anhydrase, carbon dioxide and ammonia, water combine to form carbonic acid, which again by carbonic anhydrase is split into hydrogen ions and bicarbonate. And this hydrogen ion comes in exchange for the sodium. And here the glutaminase, renal glutaminase, acts on glutamine, releases ammonia, and this hydrogen combines with this ammonium as ammonium chloride is excreted in the urine. And if there is acidosis, more amount of glutaminase will be formed so that more amount of hydrogen ions can be excreted to regulate the acid-base metabolism, to regulate the pH. Now, glutamine contributes to N3 and N9 of purine and N3 of pyrimidine and to the amino groups of guanine and cytosine. Let us see. So, glutamine contributes to N3 and N9 of purine ring. So, in the pyrimidine, so you know that carbamyl phosphate synthesis here, glutamine is the one that releases the ammonia. So, this N3 is the one that forms that is contributed from glutamine. Glutamine also donates the amino group of, amino groups of guanine and cytosine. Similarly, they're donated by phosphate. Glutamine also donates the amino group of amino sugars. You have seen that N-acetyl hexosamine, N-acetyl glucosamine, and galactosamine. The amino group of nicotinamide also is contributed by glutamine. Glutamate is formed from the metabolism of proline, arginine, and histidine. Say this, proline is acted upon by proline dehydrogenase to form dehydroproline. So the two hydrogens are removed, they form dehydroproline, and this dehydroproline by water addition becomes glutamate gamma semi-aldehyde. It is cleaved oxidative scission takes place here. So see from here, COOH, CHNH2, CH2, CH2, CHO. That becomes gamma glutamate semi-aldehyde, which can be converted to glutamic acid. That on transamination forms alpha ketoglutarate and enters the TCA cycle. So that is about proline. See, similarly, arginine, by the action of arginase, this group is removed, and then what remains is the ornithine, and ornithine, if this on transamination forms glutamate gamma semi-aldehyde. So there is proline and arginine, how they're converted to glutamate. Now coming the histidine. So the histidine is acted upon by histidase and urocanic acid is formed. So here the amino group is removed and the two hydrogens, one hydrogen is removed, and urocanate is acted upon by urokinase, a hydrolytic enzyme, and 4-imidazole 5-propionate is formed, and this is acted upon by hydrolase to form formimino-glutamate, and tetrahydrofolate takes the formimino group. So this formimino group is cleaved off to form glutamic acid. So if there is deficiency of tetrahydrofolate, this formimino group cannot be taken. This formimino-glutamate cannot be metabolized, and FIGLU or formimino-glutamate is excreted in urine. So the deficiency of tetrahydrofolate can result in FIGLU, excretion of FIGLU. So this is a load test, histidine load test. If there is deficiency, so they test for identifying whether folate deficiency is there. If there is folate deficiency, this FIGLU will be excreted in the urine. So that is how proline, arginine, and histidine can be metabolized to glutamic acid, and further metabolism glutamic acid you have seen. the amino groups of all the amino acids can be transaminated to alpha ketoglutarate to form glutamic acid, which is the only amino acid subject to oxidative deamination by hepatic glutamate dehydrogenase to release ammonia. The latter is converted to urea and is excreted. So all the amino acids, they can transfer their amino groups to alpha ketoglutaric acid to form glutamic acid, which is subjected to oxidative deamination by glutamate dehydrogenase to release ammonia, and this ammonia is excreted as urea, and alpha ketoglutarate enters the TCA cycle. Gamma carboxylation of glutamate. So the glutamic acid can undergo gamma carboxylation. So specific glutamate residues in blood clotting factors 2, 7, 9, and 10, and in osteocalcin are gamma carboxylated by vitamin K. Gamma carboxyglutamate residues can chelate calcium ions. See this glutamate residue in the presence of vitamin K epoxidase. So epoxide is formed. Vitamin K epoxide is formed. So oxidation takes place. So water is removed, and this carbon becomes active, a carbon ion. So this carbon ion can accept the carboxyl group to form carboxyglutamate, and this carboxyglutamate is a calcium chelating agent. It can remove calcium ions. Decarboxylation. Glutamate is also subject to decarboxylation by a decarboxylase, which requires pyridoxal phosphate as a coenzyme. And this decarboxylation results in formation of gamma aminobutyric acid, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter opening the chloride channels in postsynaptic membranes. And if there is deficiency of pyridoxal phosphate or this enzyme deficiency is not much known, but pyridoxal phosphate can be deficient, where gamma aminobutyric acid will not be formed, and so neurotransmission will not be inhibited. There will be excessive transmission, and convulsions will be there when there is pyridoxal phosphate deficiency. GABA is not formed to inhibit the neurotransmission. Glutamate participates in the formation of gamma glutamyl cysteine glycine. You have seen that. The glutathione, the tripeptide glutathione, and in formation of acid and glutamic acid, here there will be one additional CH2 group. So this aspartic acid is also an acidic amino acid, non-essential glucogenic. So on transamination by glutamate oxaloacetate transaminase, it forms oxaloacetic acid, which you have seen already, which initiates TCA cycle, and so glucogenic. That you remember that it is oxaloacetic acid. Okay, I'm not doing that. You know that glutamic oxaloacetate plus acetyl-CoA forms citrate, the first reaction of the citric acid cycle. Serum glutamate oxaloacetate transaminase is elevated both in hepatic jaundice and in myocardial infarction, but more specific in myocardial infarction because the tissue is richer in this enzyme. Myocardial tissue is richer. Forms oxaloacetate. So pyridoxal phosphate is the coenzyme. Aspartate is an important participant in urea cycle synthesis. You know that, urea synthesis. So this is the citrulline plus aspartate in the presence of ATP form, in the presence of the enzyme arginosuccinate synthase forms arginosuccinate. And what you have to remember here is this ATP is converted to AMP, one of the two reactions or three reactions in the whole metabolism where ATP is converted to AMP and inorganic pyrophosphate. So aspartate participates in the urea synthesis. Aspartate contributes to the N1 of purine ring and amino group of C6 of adenine. It contributes to the N1 purine ring. So inosine monophosphate is the first purine nucleotide that is formed in the de novo synthetic pathway. So this is the aspartate that gives the adenylo group or amino group of adenine. The whole molecule of aspartate is used in the pyrimidine ring to contribute N1 and C4, 5, and C6 of pyrimidine ring. See this? So carbamyl phosphate plus aspartic acid forms carbamyl aspartate, and which in the presence of dihydroorotase forms dihydroorotic acid, and this dihydroorotic acid then forms the OMP and UMP. So here, this aspartic acid, the entire aspartic acid molecule is incorporated to form the N6, C4, 5, N1, C4, C5, C6 of pyrimidine ring. So N1 of purine ring and an amino group of C6 of adenine, whole molecule of aspartate is used in pyrimidine ring to form N1 and C4, 5, and 6 of the pyrimidine. Aspartate also participates in aspartate malate shuttle. What is important with this aspartate malate shuttle? it transfers cytosolic NADH, which is formed in the glycolysis. So it is in the glycolysis that NADH is formed, whereas you know that TCA cycle is present in the mitochondria and it has to be transferred. As such, NADH is not permitted to pass through the mitochondrial membrane, and it takes this aspartate malate shuttle. So the NADH combines with oxaloacetate in the presence of malate dehydrogenase to malate, and this malate, by means of malate transporter, can cross across the inner mitochondrial membrane and enter into the mitochondria, and malate is reconverted to oxaloacetate with reformation of NADH plus H, and NADH is subject to respiratory chain. It is oxidized there to produce ATP, and this oxaloacetate now once again forms by transamination glutamate. Both aspartate and alpha ketoglutarate, they enter here and form glutamate and oxaloacetate. So oxaloacetate is reformed. So NADH has entered here. So that is the aspartate malate shuttle. So aspartate participate in aspartate malate shuttle, which transfers cytosolic NADH into mitochondria for oxidation in the respiratory chain. So it can transport ammonia from brain, combining with it to form asparagine. Like a glutamine, it can also form asparagine in the presence of asparagine synthase. So it also requires ATP, which can be acted upon in the liver by asparaginase to release ammonia, just as in the case of glutaminase in the liver. L-asparaginase is an anti-cancer drug against leukemias and lymphomas because these cells cannot utilize asparagine and so they will die when it acts as a poison. Asparagine acts as a poison for these leukemia and lymphoma cells and they die. And as it becomes an anti-cancer drug. L-asparaginase. So aspartate in the presence of ATP, and here it is preferably glutamine synthase. Like it is glutamine which donates the ammonia for aspartate. Of course, in the bacteria, even ammonia can combine with aspartate to form asparagine, but in our tissues, in the mammalian tissues, glutamine is the donor of the amino group for asparagine synthesis. So asparaginase now in the liver, so it is like glutaminase, hydrolyzes ammonia. Ammonia is removed and the aspartate then of course can be subject to transamination to form oxaloacetate, which enters this TCA cycle through the reaction of citrate synthase. Thank you. I think today I finished these 4 amino acids: glycine, alanine, aspartate, and glutamate. So we'll deal with the next other amino acids: phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, methionine in the next class. Thank you. Okay, if no doubts, thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Bye.